Very glad to be here today. And I've really enjoyed all of the sessions so far. And I don't know who gets the credit for how they were laid out, but I think it's really flowing nice because we had Scott talking about the customer experience and how you have to put your focus there in anything that you're doing from a digital transformation standpoint. And Gina talked about digital transformation and why it's so important and how prevalent it is, and how if you want to maintain your customers, you better keep that focus on them because they'll switch brands quickly in today's world. And then with David saying, well, that's all great, but what do we do with all this legacy system? You know, we have this spaghetti bowl of technology that's been around for all these years. How do we unravel that? So really the purpose of my presentation today is to help answer a question that was asked during Gina's presentation, which I thought was a good one, is where do I start? How do we begin this? And so I'm going to take you down a kind of a funnel here and narrow it down to that starting point. So aside from everything that we are dealing with COVID-19 and all that that has done to people and businesses, the advancement of technological capabilities is really so dramatic. And the experience that we're seeing and the cause of all this digital transformation is because technology is ramping ahead so quickly that it's mind-boggling in a lot of cases and forcing a lot of this change to happen. So if we think back to when we first got our first smartphone to the time now where virtually everyone has one, has gone by in a very short time period. And just think about the amount of data that we can store now. Back in the day, my very first computer, I think had a 20 meg hard drive. And now today you can buy a thumb drive that has, 128 gigabytes for like $20. So that's just amazing. And that's a good thing because we are creating and storing exabytes of data on a daily basis. And an exabyte is 1 billion gigabytes. And we're doing that every single day, and it's growing exponentially. So we're in a technological advancement capability that is now launching things like, okay, now we're talking about self-driving cars and trucks. And I watched a show on TV just last week about self-driving trucks. This is a reality. This is actually already taking place. And from my standpoint, I think maybe that's a good thing because the truck drivers have a tough job driving long distances and you know, there's a lot of rules related to how long they can drive and all this stuff. So maybe this is a good thing. Of course, I'm not a truck driver. So, I mean, if I was, I might not agree with that statement. But technology is advancing everything that we do. Today, and it makes so much sense to start moving things to the cloud. 5G wireless is a game changer. This is opening up the capabilities for wireless and things like the Internet of Things, where we're going to have billions of sensors all connected and that we can monitor and manage. And this is now causing businesses to do digital transformations that are so disruptive that, you know, it's hard to imagine. So, you know, what Uber just punched the taxi cab industry in the eye, and VRBO, although I think they want to be called Verbo now, but what that has done to travel agencies and hotel chains, Netflix with streaming, Amazon with retail, Apple with a lot of different areas, but music and other things. These are these disruptive transformations. And you want to be on the disrupting side, not the receiving of being disrupted by others. So welcome to our digital revolution. It's something that we have to look at. And so when we start talking about digital transformation, let me move this out of the way here. Digital transformation, you know, as Gina had talked about, it's a very widely used term today, and it has a lot of broad applications, and it can mean different things to different people. So from my standpoint here, what we're talking about is referring to digital transformation is a focus in today's business, their need to modernize and improve their core offerings, especially where it relates to content and data, and also the automation of those business processes. So this is relevant to really all businesses, business to business, business to consumer, especially government. It doesn't really matter what vertical that you're working in. And it doesn't necessarily matter the size of your business. This technology advancement and the digital revolution that we are working within right now, it's not just we're going to need to do this sometime soon. It's really an imperative, and it could be imperative for your own survival of your organization. So that's the type of world that we are living in right now. So we narrow it down to digital strategy, which I would call the starting point of, where do you begin when you're talking about digital transformation? And this usually comes about when companies start to begin to feel pressure, from things that are occurring outside of their business. So they lose an opportunity that they anticipated winning, and they did all the right things, and they're the top player in the market, and they end up losing something and trying to figure out why. Or long-term customers that have been very loyal to you leave your product or your service offering for something brand new that just hits the market. Why would they do that to you? Where's the loyalty? Or worst case, a competitor comes out with a new offering that really disrupts your entire space that you work in. So when these things happen, then companies go, okay, we've got to modernize our offering with better technology. And to that, I would say, yes, you do, but I wouldn't start with the technology aspect. Kind of back to Scott's presentation, you got to start with your customer experience, and you've got to get a fresh digital strategy, and it needs to come from your customer's perspective. If you're not involving your customer in this digital strategy design and the sessions to really understand where you're going, then you're missing the boat. That's the most important aspect of your starting point. So the customer experience, you got to remember the market that we're living in now, right? So it wasn't too long ago that we joked about the millennials, at least the Gen Xers and the boomers would joke about the millennials. Oh, these are these young kids and they just don't understand how the world works. They've got their heads down in their phones and all this. Well, guess what? These kids are running the companies now. These kids are the ones that are driving a lot of this change, and they don't have a lot of tolerance for poor customer service. Sometimes they don't even want to talk to people. They would prefer the chatbots because they know how to work those to get the answers quickly. They're used to instant gratification when they are trying to find what they need. And with that experience, that gets compared to the experience you're presenting to your customers, and you have to take that into account. These millennials are likely your customers one way or the other. And then we have the whole Gen Z group coming right behind them. And these kids are in high school and headed to college, so they're going to be right behind it. And they have a whole different perspective as well. So when we talk about where to begin with digital strategy, we call digital strategy the core of your transformational journey. And if you break that down into three previous presentation, with legacy systems. No matter what you do, there's likely a legacy system in place that you have to understand and address fully. And then you reinvent your strategic offerings with modern capabilities. So let's talk about the realize aspect. So you're realizing your existing digital state and the challenges and the needs. So in this statement, your existing digital state is your current complete digital offering. And it's everything that ties together. It's every integration point, it's the data, it's the processes, it's the reports that come out of it, it's the user experience, it's that entire 360-degree view of your customer that Scott was talking about. Challenges and needs then focuses on, this is where it gets to your customers' challenges and needs, not yours. You need to understand where their challenges are, and that needs to come into play with regards to whatever digital offering that you're looking to bring to the market. ideally disruptive and got to really get your arms around what it is. What are we talking about here? What needs to get done? What is the problem? And is that the real problem? Are we going to go out and just rake up all the leaves and let them all fall again so we keep raking up the leaves? Or are we going to go chop that tree down and solve the real problem that is there? Getting to the real problem is probably the most important part of your digital strategy in this realize phase. And then if you don't bring your customers into play, you're going to miss the boat. So how do your customers perceive your current offering? You have to understand where they are and what they like and what they don't like. And really the only way to do that is to ask them. And if you ask them what they are looking for, what they're wishing for, what their expectations are, that will be very telling in designing and developing the rest of your digital strategy. If we gave your customers a magic wand, what would they do? That's one of the best questions that you can ask your customers. Change anything about this product, change anything about how it is to work with our service, change anything and tell us what that is. And in fact, at InChoice, we send out questionnaires to our clients, and that's the one question that we ask them. Why are we not your number one digital strategy and transformative solution provider? Tell us the reasons why. And with that, we're able to help make changes in their world, and by changing inside of our world and giving them what they really are looking for. And then, of course, you've got what is the competition doing? What are they doing better than us? Why did somebody leave us? If somebody leaves you, you should try to find out why and get that information, because it'll be very telling. It will tell the real story about where you're missing the boat. So then we move to deconstruct. So you got to deconstruct your technical and process obligation. And we call it an obligation because it's the legacy stuff that David was talking about. And it's made up of a lot of different things. And it's your technical environment, of course, but it's all the business rules that are built into that. Some of them are hard coded in. Maybe there's a rules engine. It's probably lots of rules working across multiple applications, multiple solutions, multiple platforms, and your process flows. How do things flow today? Integration points with other systems, because you can't just go in and rip it out, because you may be ripping the guts out of some other solution that are sitting out there that are vital to other aspects of your organization, your offering, or your product. You need to understand your internal resources. What do you have to bring to the game? Where are your gaps? Where are you going to have to bring in consultants or experts to come in and help you fill those gaps? Data mapping and content stores, we're all very familiar with that. Data mapping is challenging, and Dave mentioned that. The older your data out there in the system, your legacy systems, the less likely it is really how you want it mapped. Your metadata, you don't want those same tags. You've renamed them. You're using different ones, but in your new environment, you want all that stuff to be consistent. And then your reporting systems and dashboards. Every system solution that gets put out there in the market has some form of reporting systems and dashboards, and those are going to need to be rethought completely. And so there's a lot of work here. And one way to think about this deconstruction is, think of it as two different scenarios. One, I'm going to update my house, or two, I'm going to renovate and transform my house. If you're going to update it, you're going to put in new fixtures and you're going to do a few things. And that's not all that difficult. But if you're going to transform your house, then you need to really fully understand everything that's there. You need to understand your piping, your wires, your foundation. You need to know the size, exact measurements of everything, and how the air flows in your rooms, and all these different aspects that will, once you have your arms around all of that, will give you a good idea of what it will take to get there. And the things like support beams and things like that are game changers. You've got to have all that fully understood, or the cost of your job goes up dramatically by not having gone through and deconstructed fully and get a full understanding of the obligation that you're looking at. So when deconstruction is done right, it's a pretty good feeling, actually. You have documented the entire as-is technical and process obligation. And most companies don't have that today. And if they have it today, it's inaccurate 6 months from now because things change constantly. So it's important to get a new, fresh feel of where everything is, how it's working. It also almost always uncovers previously unknown aspects. And I went back to a company that I had left to start my own company, and I'd been gone for 10 years. And I went back to the old data center, and I looked in the window there and saw a job that was running. And some of you who are really into the old ECM side of the world will understand it was an old prefetching job that had been running. And I said, well, why is that still running? And they said, well, it runs every day and it's important. Nobody really knows what it is. And I said, well, you can turn it off because I wrote that, and it's not used anymore because it's done differently in today's world. And you'd be surprised in every organization that we go into and we help with this deconstruction process, what you find that nobody had a full understanding of how it worked. Everybody has partial information, but nobody has the full story. And so getting the full story is really something that provides a calming sense, and it makes you feel like you have a complete understanding. And it answers one of the most important questions. How big is the legacy problem? How big is it starts talking about costs and people and time and all those things. So once you have that, it's a good feeling, and it's absolutely critical in this part of the game here. And it positions you then to start making decisions, and you're making it with tangible information, the real information, as opposed to doing what most companies do, and that is kind of estimating and guessing where things are at. Because this is a difficult process. It's time consuming, and but it's something that you absolutely have to overcome, and hopefully without throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Because to Dave's point in the previous presentation, some things may not have to be thrown out. Some things may not be critical and still satisfy the business need, and it's not impacting your customer's experience in any way. So your natural instinct might be, so we've got the in-house resources, they know this, so it doesn't make sense to bring somebody from the outside in. But I would caution you on that, because your people generally have different types of connections, emotional, or how things have been done historically, or personal ties based on their job to the way things work today. And really what you're looking for is fresh eyes, and somebody who comes in with no assumptions, no connections, no anything other than real open thinking, and the process will go much faster. The questions that get asked here are why? How does this work? It works like this. Why? What do you mean? And you just keep going from there, and you're digging deeper and deeper, and you uncover all types of information that is really vital and that will save you time and money down the road. So as I said, this phase can be extensive with both time and money, but the ultimate objective is to understand everything, and that means documenting everything really from scratch and validating any previous documentation, because almost all documentation is out of date in a very short time period. And companies that document their process flows so often document how they anticipated things would flow, or how they flowed for a while, but then things changed and a new system got brought in, or somebody new came in and things get done differently. And your people are going to learn to work around processes that don't work, or that streamline the process, for their particular job. So it's really important to understand how things are really working out there. The other part is most companies don't have the time or luxury to take their top performers and pull them out and go through this process. It's extensive, and they're always involved in the process because they're your subject matter experts. But having somebody else come in and streamline the process for you, somebody who can ask the hard questions and keep asking why, will take you a long way through the journey here. Which brings us to the reinvent. Reinvent with modern capabilities. So now that you realize where your challenges are, and you've got your arms around the right problem, and you feel like you're headed down the right path with that, then you deconstruct, okay, here's my technical and process obligation. How would we reinvent this for the future? And so I would urge you in this time period, this is really where you have to think big and you have to think disruptive. Uh, but always start from the customer's perspective. That is the key to everything from a digital transformation in today's world. Our customers' expectations are changing. They have a new way of thinking about things. They've got most things on their phones today. To Scott's point, you better be thinking about mobile capabilities in how you serve them, how you answer their questions, how you deliver. It's really very critical. And so this is finally, though, where you're going to leverage tools and models and things that are going to help you create that in new environment, and where you can actually start talking about technologies. So some of the tools that you would use to get there. There's a bunch in the market, and we leverage different ones depending on the situation. It's rare that we come into a client that says, "Hey, we've got all this time. We're really just thinking way ahead. We need help, deciding where we're going to be down the road." And most of the time, it is we've tried and we've failed, or we've tried and we're stuck, and we need help. So these types of models that are very common out in the market can really help you make some headway there. The business model canvas is really, it's a visual chart. It's a very simple process. There are categories that you ask questions about. This helps whoever you are working with to understand your business fully, and or internally, if you're doing all this yourself, to make sure that you're addressing all the important areas. And so when you really sit down and you start asking a client, okay, all the partners that would come into play in this transformation, all of the activities, what is your value proposition? That's a tough one. Not everybody, can get to that one, and you just slap the yellow sticky on there. This one you can find you have to spend some time on. The customer relationships, the segments that they're in, real important to understand the channels and the revenue streams, and then all the costs that are involved behind the scenes, and what are we trying to solve for? Where are the challenges? Is it in the cost? Is it in the partners you're dealing with? You learn a lot here, and this becomes a reference point down the road with other models to make sure that you aren't forgetting anybody, and that you've got your big scope out there that you are focused on. Another great tool is to do user personas. And so these are fictional characters that help you get a user-centric approach to whatever product or solution that you're looking to accomplish. You model the patterns of these individuals, what their goals are, what their attitudes are. Behaviors and emotions come into play in this, and you've got to do this early in that solution design. And kind of the magic with user personas is you're uncovering all the players involved, all the businesses that interact, the partners that are involved, every individual that might touch or play in this the solution, the customers, the competitors, and you're looking at them from human standpoints. What is their involvement? What is their need? What opinions will they have? Their desires, their purpose, their issues. And a lot of people don't take the time to go through this process, but I will tell you that it's very enlightening. And when you're doing this, each one of the characters actually gets a name, and sometimes it's real people's names in the company, and you got to be careful with that. Sometimes they're fictional names, but they're in that same position. And I'll give you a quick example. Check my time here. Okay, I'll make it real quick. We had to do a internal to InChoice. We needed, via acquisitions, we had 3 time tracking systems. And so of course management says, well, let's just get one and go look at the top 3 and we'll select one. And we kind of bypassed this process. When we said, okay, wait a minute, our people don't seem real happy about that. We went back and we did user personas and found out, well, guess what? The customer in this scenario is the people that are actually doing the work and have to track their time. And they're working on 3 or 4 projects, sometimes simultaneously, and they hate it. They hate everything about it. And so when we started from that perspective and worked through, we came back with a completely different strategy for how we were going to do time tracking as an organization. They hate doing it, but it's critical to understand, are we profitable on projects? Are we utilizing our people fully? There's a lot of questions. So the data is good, but it's hard to get. So if it can be used in that scenario, you can imagine how complicated, and it's actually a very fun exercise it can be uh, when you're working on something that's more strategic. The customer journey map, we heard Gina talk about this. It's a great way to understand all of those touch points with your customer from the first time you engage with them, how they find you, all the way through to whatever they purchase or buy from you, and then the renewals and every other aspect there. So all of these tools then take you to a point where you really start doing what we call design thinking. And so design thinking, you can think of it somewhat as the MVP, the minimum viable product strategy. So you empathize with what is going on, the players and everything. You define what it is you're going to, scope. You ideate and bring in your design thinking and all your innovative, smart people. You prototype and you test, and you do this iterative process where you're constantly improving, and you're always letting your customers get involved so that you can get the feedback, which will help you go back and make the process better each time you go through. This all leads to transformative solutions. And in transformative solutions, I would say that the main things you're looking for is they must be customer centric, and I hope we've driven that point home with all the speakers. It's got to be strategic. You're looking for a winning strategy here, and you've got to be disruptive. If you're not the one disrupting, you might be the one dying. So it's very critical to keep the focus on these. So the way we define transformative solutions, they're the result of digital strategies leveraging modern technologies to deliver customer-centric, strategic, and disruptive solutions to the market. Again, the digital strategy is in the core. Then you start talking about modern technologies that can help you create that transformative solution. So when we talk about customer-centric as part of transformative solutions, you have to put your focus on the user experience, and this is obvious. The interface has to be intuitive and smart. It needs to be smartphone app type of smart, easy to use. You don't want to have to sell training along with your solution. If you are doing that, it's going to be a turnoff to your customers. If you can make it intuitive enough, if it's that type of solution, that will go a long way. And by strategic, we're talking about you've got to streamline things. You've got to create self-service capabilities. People don't want to have to call support. People don't want to have to go through that process. They just want it to work. And you better be bringing in, intelligent automation. So AI, machine learning, all the things that you have access to in the modern technologies will help these customers be more self-sufficient, and it will give you a strategic advantage, against your competitors. And disruptive, the ultimate transformative solution disrupts the market, like Uber did, and it forces your competitor's hand. They have to respond, and it will eventually, create improved market share, which is all what we're looking for across the board, right? The competitive solution that increases our market share. One more thing to really think about as you're doing this, don't forget about security and compliance. Your transformative solutions have to be highly secure and compliant. And there's a lot of things that you have to think about based on the type of data and the processes that you're doing. And this is where you might want to get some, if you don't have a senior security officer or information officer who's familiar with these, you might want to take that into account. These are the types of things that we're focusing on ourselves, going through a SOC 2 audit right now and getting our HIPAA high trust compliance and all the things that it takes for us to be able to come and help, because our customers have all types of data. They have credit card information, they have health information, all the things that are really being regulated, and you have to be able to show how you are addressing that and making sure that it is secured. So don't forget about this part as you're going through and talking about your transformative solution, because it is vital. So, from InChoice's standpoint, we love this stuff. We've got all the resources that are, the smart ones, not me, all of my resources that really know how to do all this stuff. They're very highly experienced across many, many platforms and over many industries, and just a bunch of great people. And with all the skill sets to leverage all the models and tools to help expedite the process, because this is, it's critical in your world, and the faster you can get there, the better. And so being able to expedite very complex types of things is important. The methodologies are flexible, as I alluded to before. We never come to that starting point. It's always, false start 1 or 2, or they're almost through the process and need help getting it there. And, we collaborate on that, and we're flexible in how we engage with those clients. And we're agnostic to the technologies. And that doesn't mean that we have expertise in every possible technology. Obviously we don't, but we're really good at partnering with companies that do. And we work together to provide that solution that is needed, with instead of trying to force somebody to go down technologies that we're more familiar with. And that's an important part of this. And then again, don't forget about security and compliance. Those resources are vital to make sure that your end result is what it needs to be. And I think with that, I am done.
Thanks very much, Dave. That was great. So we're going to open things up to questions now. So for those of you attending, you should see a chat button in the Zoom control bar at the bottom of your screen, and you can just click on that and chat to the moderators. And we'll put your questions out there for Mr. Parks. Okay, I'm not seeing anything come through on chat yet.
Okay. Well, either I answered all the questions, or it's been a long day. People are running out of steam. I really appreciate the opportunity to present today, and thanks to Crawford Technologies, and I appreciate everybody who attended, and I hope you all stay healthy, and wish you all the best.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. So we do have a question here from Scott Baker, and he asks, what is a typical timeline for this process?
Yeah, it's a good question. It depends on where you are. And so really normally the way we would start this is we would kind of run through some of those items that we showed over a week or two long period, and try to gather some of that information. And then from that, we start to see how big it is. And then it gives the customer a chance to understand the value of these tools and the strategy, and wanting to make sure that their digital strategy is on target. And so that can go really from maybe a month of real hardcore focus on that to 6 months, depending on how complex things are. If there's a lot of things that have to be broken down in that deconstruction phase, and you really want to spend the right amount of time on realizing your future solution strategy, it can take time. We did one with a large government agency that was trying to revamp a very large process, and we did it in stages, and we did it over a multi-year period. And of course, they have budgets they have to work within, so we broke it down and did it over really what ended up being over 5 years. We got them off the mainframe phase one, got them on new content capability and case management capability, and then came back and helped them with portal, multi-language portal, to simplify a very complicated application type of process, and just went from there. So it was multiple phases of digital strategy, but we did all the initial high level digital strategy at the beginning and broke it up into those phases. So just depends on how big the challenge sitting in front of you is. But there's a lot of ways to skin a cat.
Right. Thank you. Um, so what do you find to be the biggest barrier or point of risk in executing a project?
The fear of making big change, I would say, is the number one barrier. There's a lot of people that spend their time talking about why something won't work or why that's not a good idea without having the freedom of open thinking to explore and to be creative. And if you bring somebody in who's good at helping with that, it can help you get past that, because a lot of organizations have that, and those people are not problems, they're just risk averse, and they know how often and sometimes that's okay, but sometimes that's where you miss the boat and you're not the disruptor, and that can be impactful in a very negative way for you down the road.
Thank you.